I came back on deck barefoot, soaked and trembling, but alive. The sea hadn't taken me. Not this time. In my hand were 3 wet passports, the edges curling from the salt water. My son's, his wife's, and my granddaughter's. I held them like evidence, like proof that I still mattered, if only to immigration control. It was after midnight, and the deck was quiet except for the gentle churn of the ship's wake. I didn't head toward the main elevators. I needed the long walk, needed to feel the weight of each step, hear the wet slap of my feet against the wood, remember that I was still here, still breathing, still deciding. When I reached my cabin, I didn't turn on the light. I sat on the edge of the bed, the hem of my nightgown dripping onto the carpet, and waited for my breathing to slow. The smell of salt clung to my skin. I placed the passports on the dresser like they were trophies, or perhaps like final warnings. 2 days ago, they filled my suitcase with rocks, but let me start properly, with the invitation. It came through a phone call from my son, Trevor. He rarely calls. Usually it's a forwarded email or a short text that reads more like a business reminder than a message from a child to his mother. But that day, he called. "Hey, Mom," he said, tone too cheerful. "We're doing something special for Izzy's graduation. A cruise, all of us. 7 days, Mediterranean. You should come." I should come. That was the phrase that stuck with me. Not "we want you there," not "we'd love to have you," just "you should come," like it was something I'd been meaning to do and simply forgot. Still, I said yes. Of course I did. What else was I going to say? "No, thank you. I'd rather stay home and water the geraniums." I hung up and sat at the kitchen table staring at my chipped mug of tea. The invitation felt less like a bridge and more like a test, and I wasn't sure I wanted to pass it. A cruise. I'd never been on one before. My late husband, Sam, hated the idea of being stuck on a floating hotel. He used to say, if I wanted overpriced food and screaming children, I'd go to a mall. But Sam had been gone for 9 years now, and maybe I was allowed new experiences. I pulled out my calendar. 7 days. Departing from Barcelona. "All expenses paid," Trevor had said. "Don't worry about a thing, Mom. It's all on us." It sounded too generous. That's when the first crack formed. My son is many things, but generous isn't one of them. Not unless there's a benefit involved. But I ignored the instinct. Instead, I went shopping. I bought a modest navy sundress and a soft straw hat. I even had my hair trimmed, though I kept it its natural silver. No need to pretend. I'm 78. I've earned my age. Packing was easy. I've never been the type to carry much. A few books, a pair of sandals, sensible clothes. The suitcase was small, blue, with one broken wheel. Sam had bought it for a trip we never took. At the airport, they didn't greet me. Not even a wave across the crowd. I found them at the gate, already checked in, sipping cold brew and scrolling their phones. "I thought you'd meet me at check-in," I said, setting down my bag. "Oh, sorry," Claire said without looking up. "We figured you'd be fine." Izzy had earbuds in. She didn't even glance up. I told myself not to take it personally. On board, things didn't improve. Trevor and Claire had booked adjoining suites for themselves and Izzy. Mine was a deck below, smaller, no balcony. I didn't complain. The first night at dinner, Claire ordered wine for everyone but me. "She doesn't drink," she told the waiter. "Right, Norma?" I hadn't touched a drop in years, but that didn't mean I wanted to be excluded. "It's fine," I said softly. "Water's good." Claire smiled as if I'd proven her point. Izzy barely looked up from her phone. By the third day, I was invisible. They went on excursions and left without telling me. I wandered the ship alone, reading on quiet decks, watching couples dance at sunset, eating at odd hours so I wouldn't sit at an empty table. That morning, I found my suitcase missing. I called Trevor. "Probably in the wrong storage bin," he said, not concerned. "Ask reception." Reception hadn't seen it. It wasn't in the cabin. It wasn't anywhere. That night I found it, floating near the edge of the ship's wake. A flash of blue in the water. It bobbed once, then dipped, weighed down by something heavy. My heart froze. I remembered the way Claire had said earlier that day, "It's nice when things end naturally." I hadn't understood it then. I do now. They filled my suitcase with rocks, and now I was sitting here, back in my cabin, dripping seawater, holding their passports in my hand. Because I didn't drown. And tomorrow, I would decide what to do. I never liked flying, not because I was afraid of it, though I suppose any sane person should be, but because of the way people behave at airports. Everyone becomes impatient, entitled, as if getting on a plane first somehow makes them superior. I saw it in the way Claire waved me off when I offered to carry my own boarding pass. "Don't worry, I've got it," she said, as if I were a child or a pet she had to shepherd through security. We hadn't traveled together since Izzy was little. Back then, I was the one carrying bags and snacks and coloring books. Now, I was baggage myself, an extra body to be arranged around their plans. Claire insisted on sitting between Trevor and Izzy on the plane. I was across the aisle, by the window, where no one had to talk to me. That suited me fine. I watched the clouds. In Barcelona, we took a taxi to the port. Trevor booked it in advance. When the driver asked where we were headed, Trevor responded without hesitation. "La Estrella Cruise Terminal." Not a glance in my direction. Not a "Mom, you doing okay back there?" The city rolled past the window. Old stone buildings, hanging laundry, children playing soccer in alleyways. I leaned my forehead against the glass and took it all in. The cruise ship was massive. It looked more like a building than a boat. 12 decks, pools, restaurants, marble floors. A city at sea. I hesitated before walking the gangway, feeling the soft sway of the ship beneath my feet. Trevor had already vanished through security. Claire and Izzy trailed behind him, heads down in their phones. I carried my own suitcase, wheeled it slowly behind me, the blue one Sam never got to use. When I reached the reception desk, the woman smiled politely. "Mrs. Harper, welcome aboard. Your cabin is 8627, Deck 8, portside." "Oh," I said, glancing at the others. "I thought we'd be together." Claire raised an eyebrow. "That's where the accessible cabins are, right? It'll be easier for you there, fewer stairs." I don't use a cane, I don't have mobility issues, but apparently I'd already been categorized. The cabin was fine, small, clean, impersonal. No windows, no balcony. Just a narrow bed, a dresser, and a TV I wouldn't turn on. I unpacked in silence. My dresses hung neatly. My books, 3 of them, went on the nightstand. I placed Sam's old leather wallet in the drawer, though there was no money in it. Just a photo of him in the army, and one of Izzy as a baby, drooling on his chest. At dinner that night, I wore the navy sundress and a modest brooch. I'd even put on lipstick. Not too bright, just a touch of rose. They were already seated when I arrived. The table was set for 4. I took the empty seat and smiled. Izzy didn't look up from her phone. Claire looked at me, then at Trevor. You didn't tell her? Tell me what? I asked, folding my napkin. There's a chef's tasting dinner tomorrow, she said. Just the three of us. It's part of Izzy's graduation celebration. They only had 3 spots left. Oh, I said, the smile frozen on my lips. But we'll all do the excursion on Tuesday together, Trevor added. The olive farm tour. I nodded. That sounds nice. It never happened. The tour. They changed plans the next morning and forgot to tell me. I wandered the ship for hours, drank tea in the cafe, watched the pool fill with young families and loud music. At some point, a young boy offered me a seashell. His mother looked embarrassed, but I thanked him. I kept the shell. Still have it. That night in my cabin, I found a note slipped under the door. It was printed on cruise ship stationery. Please confirm dietary restrictions in advance. Your party has notified us of a salt-free preference. I hadn't. I like salt just fine. The next morning at breakfast, my eggs came bland, my toast unbuttered. Claire smiled across the table. We're just watching out for your health. Health. They said it often, always with a smile, always with something taken away. That evening, as I walked alone along Deck 9, I saw my reflection in the glass. Thin, upright, quiet, not fragile, not yet. I heard Claire's voice before I saw her, hushed, tense, speaking into her phone by the railing. She doesn't even notice, she was saying. It'll be clean, quiet. Just let it happen naturally. I stopped walking. She turned, caught sight of me, and pasted on a smile. Oh, hey, I didn't see you. Lovely night, I said. She nodded. You should turn in early. Tomorrow's a long day. I nodded too and walked past her. But I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the blue suitcase in the corner. And I wondered, not if they wanted me gone, but how far they'd go to make it happen. 2 weeks before the cruise, I stood in front of the dressing room mirror at Trudy's boutique and stared at a woman I barely recognized. The lighting was unflattering, too yellow, too honest, and the dress I held against my body looked more hopeful than appropriate. But I bought it anyway. Navy blue, modest neckline, thin belt. It reminded me of something I might have worn 30 years ago, before grief thickened in my joints, before my name started getting left off guest lists. Trudy herself, who'd known me since Izzy was a toddler, adjusted the hem with practiced hands. You going somewhere special, Norma? I nodded. Family cruise. Her eyebrows lifted just a little. How nice. All of you together? All of us, I said, trying to make it sound simple. When I got home, I laid the dress gently over the arm of the couch and made a list. I've always loved lists. They make things feel manageable. I wrote down everything I'd need: sunscreen, books, walking shoes, my daily vitamins. Then, just below toothbrush, I added something I hadn't intended to. Talk to Trevor about the will. I crossed it out quickly. Then rewrote it on the next page. There are things one should address before international travel. Not because I expected something to go wrong, but because that's what responsible people do. Still, the fact that it even occurred to me told me something. I called my bank the next day to confirm my balance. I keep things modest. The house Sam and I paid off long ago. No debts, some savings. Nothing extravagant, but more than enough to attract interest. Especially the kind that smiles across a dinner table and says, "You really should start thinking ahead, Mom." Claire had said it 3 months ago on one of her rare Sunday visits. Her tone had been sweet, her expression soft. It's just, you never know, and probate is such a mess. I'd nodded politely and changed the subject. But I hadn't forgotten. I didn't resent my family for needing things. Life is expensive. I know that. I've paid for braces, camp fees, repairs on Trevor's roof when the insurance wouldn't cover it. I've paid for Izzy's music lessons, even though she quit after 3 sessions. I've done what mothers do, quietly, without strings. But lately, I'd started to wonder if all that giving had blurred the lines. I spent the next day cleaning out the attic. Not out of necessity, I wasn't dying after all, but because something in me felt unsettled. Like the cruise would be a threshold, and I needed to put my house in order before I crossed it. I found a shoebox labeled Sam in faded marker. Inside were old receipts, a letter he wrote me on our 10th anniversary, and the watch he wore every day of our marriage. It had stopped ticking years ago, but I couldn't bring myself to throw it out. I placed it in my suitcase, nestled between 2 blouses. Later that evening, I called my friend May. "Norma, a cruise," she said, delighted. "You'll have a ball, all those desserts, and maybe a little sun on your shoulders." I smiled. May always made things sound better than they were. "I'm not sure I'll fit in," I admitted. "You're the mother," she said firmly. "You don't have to fit. You are the fit." I laughed at that. Tell that to my daughter-in-law. "Claire's never liked anyone who doesn't agree with her," May said. "I remember how she looked at the fruitcake you brought that first Christmas, like it was a threat to her souffle. She's very polished." "She's very cold," May corrected. "Don't let her freeze you out." I thanked her and promised to send a postcard. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with my checkbook. I didn't write anything, just opened it, stared at the blank lines. It felt symbolic, like I was choosing not to offer anything more. Not until I saw what this cruise really was. Was it a gesture of inclusion or something else entirely? I packed the next day. I packed light. I've always traveled light. 2 dresses, 1 pair of walking shoes, 1 sun hat, a silk scarf I hadn't worn since Sam's retirement party, and Sam's watch wrapped in a sock. I left the jewelry box behind. No need to bring anything they could eye or envy. Not that they would. Claire wore diamonds. Izzy liked minimalist gold. My wedding ring, now worn on a chain around my neck, had no sparkle, just weight. When the day of departure came, I checked the stove twice, left a key with the neighbor, and took one last walk around the house. I stopped in front of the photo wall in the hallway. Trevor's graduation, Izzy's first birthday, Sam holding me from behind at Lake Monroe. I touched each frame once, then picked up my suitcase, the blue one, the one that would soon sink. But I didn't know that yet. We met at the cruise terminal in Barcelona. At least I did. They were already inside when I arrived. I'd asked Trevor what time they planned to get there. He said, "Oh, around noon, give or take." I got there at 11:45, hoping to be early enough that we could check in together. Bored as a family, maybe even take a photo. Instead, I stood outside for 20 minutes in the sun, pulling my suitcase over uneven pavement, scanning the crowd. The terminal was chaos. Children tugging on suitcases, honeymooners posing for selfies, couples bickering over boarding passes. At 12:10, I gave up and went in. I found them in the check-in line, laughing at something on Izzy's phone. Claire was wearing crisp white linen and enormous sunglasses. Trevor had on a shirt I'd never seen before. Expensive-looking, navy, probably tailored. Izzy wore ripped jeans and a tank top that said, "Nope." No one saw me at first. "Hello," I said, stepping up beside them. Claire turned slowly. "Oh, there you are?" Trevor gave me a tight smile. "Thought you'd meet us at the gate." I was waiting outside. Oh, Claire said. We didn't think you'd get here that early. Izzy didn't look up. I rolled my suitcase behind them as we moved through the line. At the counter, Claire handled all the passports. When the attendant asked for mine, she turned to me. You have it, right? I did. I handed it over. The woman behind the desk smiled. Welcome aboard, Mrs. Harper. Your cabin is on deck 8. Inside, midship. Claire and Trevor exchanged a glance. You're not next to us? Trevor asked. No, the attendant said. You've got the adjoining suites on deck 10. I turned to Trevor. I thought we'd be near each other. He shrugged. Must have been a mix-up. Claire was already moving on. It's probably for the best, she said over her shoulder. The stairs can be a lot. I use elevators, I replied, but no one was listening. The ship loomed outside the window. Massive, gleaming, surreal. It looked like something out of a movie, a floating skyscraper. We boarded together, technically, but once inside, they disappeared fast. I stood at the ship's entrance as crew members welcomed guests with music and flutes of orange juice. I didn't see my family again until dinner. My cabin was clean, small. It smelled faintly of bleach and fabric softener. The bed was made with military precision. On the desk sat a welcome packet: daily schedule, ship map, list of amenities. I found my muster station, then hung up my clothes. One drawer for tops, one for underthings, one for the important things: my journal, my documents, Sam's watch. I kept the suitcase under the bed. I didn't lock it. It didn't occur to me to. That first afternoon, I wandered the decks. The pool was already loud with music and laughter. Children screamed and cannonballed into the water. Adults sipped cocktails and posed for photos. No one noticed me. I stopped at the library, took out a book I'd already read, sat in a lounge chair on the quiet side of Deck 5, and watched the dock shrink behind us as we left the harbor. It felt strange to leave land. Stranger still to feel so utterly alone with family on board. At 6:30, I made my way to the restaurant. Our reservation was for 7. I wore the navy dress and the pearl earrings Sam gave me on our 25th anniversary. I arrived first. The hostess led me to a table for 4 near the windows. The other 3 chairs stayed empty for 20 minutes. When they arrived, Claire looked surprised to see me. Oh, you're already here. I figured I should be on time. Good for you, she said, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Trevor took the seat next to Izzy. Claire sat across from them, leaving me the last spot, diagonally across from my granddaughter, who kept her headphones in and looked at the menu like it was a text message. Izzy, Claire said, take those out. Izzy sighed audibly, but complied. The waiter came. Claire ordered a bottle of white wine and 3 glasses. When the waiter asked if I'd like anything, she jumped in. She doesn't drink. I'll have a glass, I said quietly. Claire blinked. Are you sure? With your medication? I'm not on any medication, I said. Trevor looked away. Dinner was slow, tense. They talked mostly about Izzy's university options. Yale, Stanford, possibly NYU, but the dorms are atrocious. No one asked what I thought, or how I was. I ate my salmon in silence. It was dry. I didn't complain. At the end of the meal, Claire handed the waiter a cruise card. It's all on us, she said. Part of the package. I reached for my own card just in case, but she waved me off. You're our guest. I almost laughed. Guest? Not family. Guest. We walked back toward the elevators. They got in together. I waited for the next one. Back in my cabin, I undressed slowly, placed my shoes by the door, hung the dress neatly, I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. I didn't look like a threat. I looked like a woman who would be missed only out of obligation. And perhaps not even that. The first full day at sea began with silence. I woke up before the ship's announcements, before the hallway sounds of carts and footsteps, before the banging of cabin doors. My body still ran on land time. I dressed quietly. Light slacks, a linen blouse, and the small gold watch Sam once fixed for me with trembling fingers near the end. It no longer kept perfect time, but I wore it anyway. I walked up to the deck just as the sun crested over the water. The air was cool, salty. Empty deck chairs lined the railings, each facing the endless blue. For a moment, I felt like the only person on the ship. I liked it better that way. Breakfast was buffet style. I took a tray, found a table near the window, and served myself oatmeal, fruit, one small pastry. I was almost finished when Claire appeared, holding a smoothie and her phone. "Oh, you're here," she said. "We had breakfast in the suite." I nodded. She sat for a moment, but didn't eat, just scrolled. "Trevor's checking the schedule," she said. "We might go to that wine tasting class later." "Sounds nice." She glanced at me. "It's probably not your thing." "Maybe not," I replied, though I hadn't been asked. Izzy wandered in next, wearing pajama shorts and a sweatshirt. She saw me, hesitated, then walked past to grab her own food. No, good morning, not even a wave. Claire stood. "We'll catch you later. We're heading to the spa." She didn't wait for a reply. By 10 o'clock, I was alone again. I spent the morning on deck 7, where fewer people lingered. I read for a while, walked a little, watched couples play shuffleboard. No one spoke to me. At lunch, I sat in the atrium cafe. They passed by, Claire in a sundress, Trevor in shorts and sunglasses, Izzy trailing behind. But they didn't see me, or didn't want to. Later, when I knocked on their suite door, there was no answer. I left a note. "Just wanted to say hello. Hope you're enjoying the day. Mom." No one replied. I sat on a bench by the observation deck until my back ached. A young boy rode his scooter too close and clipped my foot. His mother apologized quickly, not stopping. I waved it off. It didn't hurt. Not really. At dinner, I waited 20 minutes again. When they arrived, Claire said, "Oh, we ate earlier at the sushi bar. Izzy was craving something light." "But this is our table." Trevor shrugged. "We figured you'd already eaten." I hadn't. But I ordered soup and tea. Ate alone while they chatted about the show they planned to see that evening. "You'd probably find it loud," Claire said. "I enjoy music." Trevor looked mildly surprised. "Really? I don't remember you ever." "You don't remember much lately," I said gently. Claire's lips tightened. After dinner, they left together. I walked back to my cabin through the long hall of closed doors. Each identical. Mine the only one that felt like it wasn't being visited. Back inside, I sat on the edge of the bed, removed my watch, my earrings, folded my clothes neatly. The air conditioning hummed softly. The sea rocked gently beneath the floor. Invisible, I thought. That's what I was. Not unwanted, not hated, just unneeded. And I wasn't sure which was worse. The second day began with a knock on my cabin door. Not a knock of concern or invitation, just the kind of perfunctory rap that signals someone on a schedule. I opened the door to find Claire, already dressed in resort whites and large sunglasses, holding a printed itinerary. "There's a brunch at the captain's table," she said. "Formal, but not too formal. Try not to wear anything with prints." I blinked. Why? They photographed terribly. Before I could answer, she turned and walked away. I closed the door and looked at the 2 dresses I'd packed. One was navy, the one I'd worn the night before. The other was pale lilac with a soft floral pattern. I wore the lilac. I arrived at the event 5 minutes early. The dining room had been transformed. White linens, crystal glassware, tall flower arrangements. A violinist played near the windows. Claire looked me up and down as I approached. "Oh," she said. "That's springy." I smiled. "Thank you." Trevor was adjusting his cufflinks. He didn't comment on my appearance. Izzy wasn't there yet. "Do I sit here?" I asked, gesturing toward the seat beside Trevor. Claire shook her head. "You're at the second table. It's mostly extended guests and press." "I thought we were all invited together." Claire gave a small, tight smile. "It's just logistics, Norma. You understand." I understood. I sat with strangers. Nice enough people, but none of them spoke much to me. One woman asked how I knew the Harpers. I said, "I'm his mother," nodding toward Trevor. She blinked. "Oh, I thought you were a friend of the cruise line." I didn't correct her. The captain made a speech. Toasts were raised. Photos taken. From where I sat, I could barely see my family, but I caught glimpses. Claire laughing with someone in pearls, Trevor holding a flute of champagne, Izzy scrolling her phone. No one looked my way. Afterward, I found them in the atrium. "Lovely brunch," I said. Claire nodded. "They do these things well." "You looked beautiful in that white dress," I added sincerely. She paused. "It's Carolina Herrera." I didn't know what to say to that. Later, by the pool, I tried to join them. They'd taken a shaded cabana near the upper deck. I approached, smiling. Izzy sighed. Claire didn't look up from her book. Trevor said, "You okay, Mom?" "I'm fine." "You're squinting." "It's sunny." Claire glanced at me. "Do you not have sunglasses?" "I brought a pair, just not out right now." Claire leaned toward her bag. "I have an extra pair of mine. They're designer, but maybe they'll suit you." I reached out to take them, but she paused. "Actually, never mind. They probably won't fit your face shape." Izzy snorted softly. Trevor said nothing. I nodded. "That's all right." I walked to the railing and stood alone for a while, watching the sea, pretending it was my choice to be elsewhere. That evening, I got a call to my cabin from guest services. "Mrs. Harper, we've had a report from your suite. Something about misplaced belongings?" "I don't believe so," I said. "Your family mentioned you may have lost your medication?" "I'm not on any medication." A pause. "All right. Thank you, ma'am." After dinner, which I again ate alone, I returned to my room to find my suitcase open. Nothing missing, nothing damaged, just open. Like an invitation or a warning. I sat on the bed and looked at it for a long time. That night, I wrote in my journal, "They don't want me here. Not just physically, emotionally, socially. They want me quiet, absent, decorated like furniture, soft, unobtrusive, and gone when the season changes." And then I added one more line. "I may not belong to them anymore, but I still belong to myself." The third day started differently, not with silence or cold politeness, but with coffee. Trevor knocked on my door at 9:15, holding 2 cups in those paper carriers. He hadn't brought me coffee in years. Not since he was a teenager and trying to apologize for breaking a vase. He swore he didn't touch. "Morning, Mom," he said, smiling like it was natural. "Morning," I replied, stepping aside. "Come in." He didn't sit, just hovered near the dresser, looking around the room as if taking stock. His eyes landed on the photo of Sam, the one in uniform, the same I'd carried on every trip since his funeral. Trevor looked quickly away. "I thought we could talk," he said. "You know, just you and me." I nodded. "That would be nice." He handed me one of the cups. I sipped. Too much sugar. He used to remember how I took it. Apparently not anymore. "I know things have been a little awkward," he began. "Claire's intense sometimes, but she means well. And Izzy's just a teenager. She's 20. He gave a short laugh. "Right. Still, that whole generation's allergic to conversation." He sat down then. Finally. Hands folded over his knee like he was about to pitch something. And he was. "So," he said, "Claire and I have been talking about the future." I waited. "And, we just want to make sure everything's in order for you." I took another sip. "In order how?" "Well, finances, your will, that kind of thing. God forbid anything ever happens, but it's smart to be proactive." There it was. I stared at him for a moment. His face was calm. Too calm. He'd practiced this. Maybe even rehearsed it with Claire. "I have everything in order," I said. "Sure, of course," he replied quickly. "We just thought, if you needed help, we could recommend someone. Claire's cousin is an estate planner." I smiled politely. "I already have one." "Oh?" Silence. He tried a different angle. "It's just, after what happened to Claire's aunt, we realized how messy things can get. The house, the bank accounts, I'm not dead yet," I said, voice flat. He looked embarrassed. "I didn't mean that. But you're thinking about it." He spread his hands. "We just want to avoid complications. Protect your wishes." I leaned forward. "Do you know what my wishes are, Trevor?" He blinked. "Well, I assume." "You assume," I cut in. "That's the problem." He fell quiet. I softened a little. "I'm not upset," I said. "It's wise to talk about these things, but don't pretend it's for my peace of mind when it's clearly for yours." He flushed, looked away. "I've already spoken to my lawyer," I added. "I have a will, a trust. Everything's taken care of." "Oh, okay, that's good." He stood. Conversation over. "Thanks for the coffee," I said as he walked to the door. He paused, hand on the knob. "Just so you know, Claire wasn't trying to be rude at dinner last night." "She succeeded anyway." He gave me one last glance. "I hope we can spend more time together this week." "Me too," I said, and meant it. But we both knew we wouldn't. When he left, I sat in silence for a long time. Later, I checked my handbag. The folder with my documents was still there, unmoved. That night, I locked my suitcase for the first time. The fourth morning brought a quiet I hadn't planned on. I woke to a still ship, soft light filtering through the crack under my cabin door. I checked the time, 8:12 a.m. I dressed quickly and headed upstairs, assuming we'd all planned to disembark together for the day's excursion. The Olive Farm tour. Claire mentioned it on the first night. I wore the wide-brimmed sun hat I'd packed specially for this, combed my hair, even put on the rose-tinted lipstick that made my skin look less tired. The weather was perfect. Soft breeze, clear skies. A day for photographs and memories. I waited near the gangway for nearly half an hour, watched families pour down onto the pier. Matching hats, matching bags, matching laughter. My family never came. I tried their suite. Knocked 3 times, no answer. I went to the main desk, just in case. "Harper family?" I asked. The woman checked her tablet. "They disembarked earlier, about an hour ago." "Are you sure?" Yes, ma'am. The cabin scanned out at 7:05 a.m. I smiled weakly. Thank you. They'd left without me. No text, no note, no knock on my door. Just gone. I wandered the upper deck in silence. Sat near the rail and watched the town unfold below. Sun-washed villas, rows of olive trees, narrow stone streets. I imagined them walking now, tasting oil, laughing with locals, taking photos that would never include me. I sat in that chair for hours. At one point, a crew member walked by and asked if I'd like something to drink. I thanked him and ordered tea. He brought it with a lemon slice without asking. I appreciated that. His name tag read Marco. He looked no older than 22. You're not joining the tour today? He asked politely. My family forgot I existed, I said, with a small smile. He looked uncertain. I'm sure that's not true. I'm sure it is. He hesitated, then smiled kindly. Well, they're missing the nicest person on board. It wasn't flirtation. It was kindness, a rare, startling thing. Thank you, I said, meaning it. I drank my tea slowly. Then I ordered another. Lunch came and went. I didn't feel like eating. Just walked the length of the ship once, twice, again. Every couple I passed looked a little like Sam and me, back when walking was something we did without thinking. By the time the excursion returned, I was back in my cabin. I heard their door slam upstairs. Laughter. The sound of bags being tossed. Claire's voice saying, "Did you see the look on that guy's face when—" Then it faded. No knock on my door. No, "We missed you." That night at dinner, I didn't go. I sat on the bed, peeled an orange I took from the breakfast buffet, and ate it slowly over a paper napkin. I reread the same page in my book 5 times. Around 9, the ship shuddered slightly, a shift in course. I liked that sensation, the reminder that we were moving forward, even if it didn't feel like it. Before bed, I opened my journal. They are not cruel, not in the way villains are cruel. They are simply careless, with me, with love, with memory. And carelessness, in some ways, is worse than cruelty. It hides behind innocence. But I see it now. I see it clearly. And I am almost ready. On the 5th morning, I decided to sit somewhere new. The ship had a small cafe tucked behind the art gallery, quiet, windowless, but full of dark wood and the scent of real coffee. It reminded me of the places Sam and I used to go on rainy Sundays. Booths instead of chairs. Linen napkins. Silence that didn't demand conversation. I chose a corner table and ordered breakfast, alone. A soft-boiled egg, toast, coffee. I had just finished buttering my toast when the waiter returned. "Mrs. Harper?" he asked. His accent was faint, his English polished. "Yes?" "I noticed you were sitting alone. I hope everything's all right." I looked up. He was young, maybe 25, clean-cut, serious eyes. His name tag said Luis. He stood with his hands neatly folded behind his back, as if waiting for something more than an order. "I'm perfectly fine," I said. He nodded, but didn't leave. "I've seen you around," he said. "At dinner, too. I serve your family sometimes." I raised an eyebrow. He cleared his throat. "They are a little distracted." I smiled, surprised at his careful choice of words. That's one way to put it. He hesitated again. "I only mention it because I see a lot of families here, all kinds, and you seem very separate." "That's because I am." He looked at me with something close to sympathy, but not the kind that makes you feel smaller. It felt more like acknowledgement, like he was confirming something I already knew. I leaned back in my chair. You're not supposed to talk to guests like this, are you? He smiled. No, ma'am. But some guests don't act like they see you. And some look like they'd appreciate being seen. That made my throat tighten unexpectedly. I nodded, unsure what to say. Would you like anything else? No. But thank you, Luis. He gave a small bow, the way people do when they've said something with more meaning than they're supposed to. Then he walked away. I finished my coffee slowly. Afterward, I found myself walking the ship's art gallery. Dozens of paintings lined the walls, oversized florals, bland seascapes, abstract things with big price tags. None of it interested me. But the gallery was quiet. No families, no music, no announcements, just air conditioning and stillness. As I turned a corner, I saw my reflection in a framed piece of glass. I looked settled. Not happy, not sad, just settled. And that scared me more than being forgotten. Settled meant resignation. I'd never been a woman who resigned. Not when Sam got sick. Not when the business failed. Not when I had to refinance the house and go back to work at 60. But this cruise, this family, this silence, had worn me down in ways I hadn't recognized. Until Luis said it plainly, separate. That afternoon, I didn't try to find them. I didn't walk past their suite or check the ship's schedule to see where they might be. Instead, I sat on the sun deck with a hat over my eyes and listened to the water roll. And when Luis passed by with a tray, he gave me the faintest nod. Like we were on the same page. Like someone had finally noticed the quiet woman in the corner. And I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in days. Not anger, not sorrow, strength. Tiny and trembling, but real. The 6th day started off calm, but something felt off. The sea was smooth, the sky cloudless, and yet I woke with a strange weight in my chest. Not fear exactly, but a quiet tension, like a thread pulled too tight. I brushed it off at first. Thought maybe I'd just slept poorly. Maybe I'd had a dream I couldn't remember. Still, I dressed more carefully than usual. Slacks. My cream blouse with the scalloped collar. I even added a brooch I hadn't worn in years. A small silver bird, wings spread. It had belonged to Sam's mother. She always said it brought clarity. I needed clarity. After breakfast, alone again, of course, I walked the upper deck and tried to distract myself with the sky, the ocean, the pale blue nothingness all around us. But the feeling only deepened. I couldn't name it, and that made it worse. I passed by the family's suite around noon. Not because I wanted to, I'd long since stopped hoping they'd open the door. But because the route to the library took me right past it. The door was slightly ajar. I paused, just for a second. Then I heard Claire's voice. Inside, muffled but sharp. She's barely aware of anything. Honestly, it's like dealing with a ghost. Then Izzy. You think she even notices when we're gone? Laughter. Trevor's voice, quieter, harder to read. Let's just keep things smooth until the end. The end? I moved on before they saw me. Back in my cabin, I sat in the armchair and stared at the closed suitcase under the bed. Something about the way Trevor said it, until the end, felt rehearsed, like a conclusion already agreed upon, like a plan. I stood and opened the closet. My shoes were still damp from yesterday's rain on the deck. I reached for a towel and noticed my passport folder, which I always kept zipped in the inside pocket of my luggage, was sitting out on the nightstand. Open. I hadn't touched it. The passports were still there, mine, and the emergency contact copies I carried for Izzy, Claire, and Trevor. tucked from years back. A habit I never lost, but someone had opened it. I checked the zipper of my suitcase next. It was half closed. Not how I'd left it. The sinking feeling moved from my chest to my stomach. Later that afternoon, I found myself outside the medical center. I didn't go in, just stood there for a long moment, wondering if it was time to say something, and knowing I didn't yet have enough to say. That evening, I skipped dinner again. I sat in the corner of the observation lounge and sipped weak tea. The sun set slowly, bleeding color across the sky. A couple next to me whispered about their anniversary. When I returned to my cabin, the room had been turned down. Lights dimmed, fresh towels folded, and on the pillow, where the steward usually left a chocolate, there was nothing. But on the desk, folded neatly, was a note. Not from the staff. Typed. No name. No handwriting. "It's better if you sleep through tomorrow." That was it. No signature, no explanation. I read it 3 times. Then I folded it, placed it in my journal, and sat very still. The air in the cabin felt colder now. Or maybe it was just me. I turned off the light, lay on the bed fully dressed. My heart thudded against my ribs. Not wild, but steady. The kind of rhythm that belongs to someone who knows something isn't right. Tomorrow was the last day of the cruise, and I didn't know if I was supposed to finish it. That night, the ship rocked gently under the weight of silence. I couldn't sleep. The note lay on my nightstand, half in shadow, as if even the light didn't want to touch it. I'd memorized the words. "It's better if you sleep through tomorrow." Better for whom? I rose around midnight, dressed slowly, quietly. Loose pants, soft sweater, sneakers. I left the cabin without turning on the light. The hallway was empty. Just the soft hum of the ship and the distant clink of something rolling on a tray. Deck 11 was deserted. No music, no laughter, no staff. Just the moonlight pooling across the floor, silver and silent. I walked to the railing. The sea was ink, black as regret. The kind of black that has weight. The wind pulled gently at my sleeves. And that's when I saw it. Far down the starboard side. A flash of blue, something bobbing in the water, half submerged. It looked like fabric. No, not just fabric. It looked like my suitcase. I froze. I wasn't near the pool. This wasn't a towel. It was the small blue suitcase I'd packed so carefully. I gripped the railing and stared, heart pounding. The sea rolled it once, twice. Then it began to dip, heavier than it should have been. Too heavy. My legs moved before my mind caught up. I turned, rushed down to the lower deck, barefoot now, not caring who saw me. No one did. Deck 4 was empty. The emergency stairs led to a crew-only walkway, a narrow platform that traced the outer edge of the ship. I'd seen it once on a tour, not for passengers. But tonight I didn't care. I stepped into the wind. There, below, caught in the ship's current, was the suitcase. Mine, half sunk. No question. The zipper was broken, a corner torn, and inside, I could just make it out, stones. Large, uneven, heavy. I gripped the rail with both hands. Someone had filled my suitcase with rocks. Not by accident. Not some cruel prank. This was planned, and placed where I'd eventually find it, or maybe never find it. I stared at it so long my eyes began to water. Then I did something I didn't think I was capable of. I climbed over the lower safety bar, just enough to steady myself, knees pressed to the metal, and I jumped. The water swallowed me whole, cold, hard, real. It shocked every thought from my head, every fear, every word. I kicked upward, gasping as I broke the surface. The ship towered above me now, all light and distance. But I didn't scream. I didn't flail. I swam. To the suitcase. It was sinking. I caught it by the handle just before it vanished, pulled it to me. It dragged me down, heavy with stones, but I wouldn't let go. I kicked harder, turned onto my back, floated with it in my arms. And then, as if the sea understood, it gave me a wave, a soft push, a current that curved me slowly, painfully, toward a lower service platform. I found a rung. A rusted emergency ladder bolted into the hull. I pulled myself up, coughing, the suitcase heavier than ever. When I reached the platform, I collapsed onto my side, clutching the thing like a corpse. Dripping, freezing, alive. I looked at it, at the rocks inside, at the implication, and I knew. This wasn't neglect anymore. It wasn't forgetfulness or carelessness or even indifference. It was an attempt to erase me, quietly, efficiently, and permanently. I lay there for a long time, chest heaving, blood pounding in my ears. Then I stood. And I carried the suitcase back, not because I needed it, but because I needed them to know I saw it. And I carried it like truth. My hands wouldn't stop shaking, not from fear, not anymore. That part had passed in the water, somewhere between the first kick and the first gasp. No, this was something colder, something rooted, a trembling that came from realizing the people you loved had stopped seeing you as human. I sat on the metal grating of the crew platform, soaked through, my knees pulled to my chest. The suitcase lay beside me, half open, stones spilling out like broken teeth. My passport folder, now waterlogged, clung to the lining. I pulled the rocks out one by one, smooth, heavy, some still wet with salt water. The ship's crew must have used these in landscaping. They weren't personal, not meaningful. That was the point. Whoever packed this didn't care what the rocks were, only that they sank, only that I did. And that's when it struck me. They didn't expect me to be the one to open the suitcase. They expected it to vanish quietly. A lost item, a mishap. Luggage mishandled at sea. But it wasn't lost, and I wasn't gone. I stood, my clothes clinging to me, and forced the suitcase closed. It didn't zip properly, but I wrapped the handle tight with the belt from my slacks and began the walk back across the outer deck. No one stopped me. No one asked why an old woman in soaked clothes was dragging a dripping suitcase through the emergency corridor. This ship had blind spots. It had routines and assumptions, just like my family. It wasn't hard to reach the upper levels again. The service elevator took me to Deck 10, their floor. I stood in front of their suite, listening. Inside, laughter, the buzz of a television, glass clinking. Izzy's voice rising in that disinterested pitch she used when scrolling. I knocked once. Firm, not loud. The voices paused. Footsteps. Trevor opened the door halfway, a drink in his hand. His expression didn't change when he saw me. "Mom," he said slowly. Water pooled around my shoes. My hair clung to my face. The suitcase dripped between us. He didn't ask what happened. Didn't say my name. Claire appeared behind him, barefoot. Her eyes flicked to the suitcase, then back to me. "Where were you?" she asked, too casually. "In the ocean," I said. She blinked. Trevor's jaw tightened. "What?" I tilted the suitcase forward, let it fall open at their feet. Rocks tumbled out, wet, heavy, loud on the tile. Claire stepped back. Izzy appeared then, saw the scene, and let out a short laugh, the kind she used when she didn't understand something and didn't want to. I looked at all three of them and said nothing. The silence grew. Claire broke it. "You're being dramatic." I didn't answer. Trevor said, "Mom, what is this?" Still, I said nothing, because there was nothing to explain. They knew. Whether it was Claire's idea or something quietly agreed upon, or something suggested with a glance and a nod and not a single word spoken aloud, I would never know. And I didn't care. They watched me for a moment longer. Then Trevor said, "You can't just barge in here with—" I stepped back. I bent down. And I picked up their passports from inside the suitcase. Mine still among them, blurred at the edges but intact. I held them up, dripping in my hand. Then I turned and walked away. I didn't go back to my cabin. Not yet. I went to the front desk, asked to speak to security, asked to speak to the captain. And then I asked one more thing. I'd like to be escorted off the ship as soon as we dock. No tears, no explanations, just requests. When I returned to my cabin, I changed into dry clothes, sat on the bed, and opened my journal. I walked into the sea tonight and came back with proof. Tomorrow, I decide what gets left behind and what comes with me. I didn't sleep that night, not for lack of trying. I lay down, eyes closed, body still, but my mind played every second of the past 24 hours like it was afraid I might forget. The cold of the water, the weight of the suitcase, Trevor's face when I opened it, Claire's voice, sharp and false, and underneath it all, a strange, steady calm, like something inside me had clicked into place. I wasn't afraid anymore. I wasn't hoping anymore either. At 5 a.m, I stood barefoot at the window, watching the first lights of the coast appear on the horizon. We were nearing port, Italy, I thought, or maybe the south of France. I no longer cared. I'd made other plans. My clothes were already packed, dry ones this time, carefully folded. I left the suitcase open on the bed, as if daring someone to look inside it again. But they wouldn't. Not now. I'd spoken to the purser's office, to security, to the ship's administration. Not as a victim, not with trembling hands. I'd spoken like someone who knew exactly what she was doing. Like someone who'd spent her whole life being dismissed and was done apologizing for taking up space. They asked if I wanted to file a formal report. I said no. They asked if I wanted to press charges. I said not yet. All I wanted, I said, was to disembark first, quietly, with privacy, and to take 3 specific passports with me, temporarily, just until things were clarified. They agreed, and then gently, I requested the printed transcript of all onboard keycard activity linked to my cabin number. That one took them a little longer. At breakfast, I arrived first again. Claire joined me 5 minutes later, hair perfect, lipstick fresh, as if nothing had happened. She sat down with the poise of someone still playing the part, the concerned daughter-in-law, the dignified matriarch in training. "Good morning," she said, tone light. I looked at her. She had a small bandage on one knuckle. I wondered what it was from. The suitcase handle? A rock that slipped? I nodded. "Morning. You seem well rested." I stirred my tea. Water has that effect on me. A flicker of irritation crossed her face, but she smoothed it quickly. "I just want to make sure you're all right," she said. "You know, with everything." "Everything," I repeated. She leaned in. "Families fight, Norma. Things get misunderstood." "That's true. I mean, surely you don't think anyone meant for—" I held up a hand, calmly, not to silence her, just to stop the dance. You don't need to explain, Claire. I wasn't, you were, and it's all right. She frowned. You're not making sense. I think, I said softly, I'm making more sense now than I have in years. She blinked. I folded my napkin and stood. You won't see me again this morning, but don't worry. I've arranged for your passports to be returned to you at the terminal. Her face changed then. Something slipped. What do you mean? You'll be fine. You'll just have to wait a bit longer in customs, that's all. She stood too. Norma, give them to me. I smiled and walked away. I didn't see Trevor before I left. I think he knew better. Or maybe he just didn't want to face what I'd become. Not a mother, not a quiet presence in the background, but a mirror. One he couldn't look into without seeing himself clearly. Izzy I saw briefly. She was in the hallway, scrolling her phone, one earbud in. I paused. She glanced up. Hi, she said flatly. Hi, I replied. She started to turn away, but I added, You were different once. She looked at me. You were kind when you were small. You used to braid my hair and say I smelled like flour. She shifted uncomfortably. I was a kid. Yes, I said. And that's when you knew who I was. She opened her mouth, but I didn't let her speak. I just smiled. Then I walked to the elevator. At disembarkation, I was led through a side corridor. No lines, no announcements, just a quiet path down the gangway with a single crew member beside me. In my bag were 3 water-damaged passports and a signed note from the ship's captain confirming custody. Outside, the morning sun hit my face, and I breathed. Really breathed. No noise, no games, just air, salt, and silence. Not the kind of silence they gave me. My kind. Mine. And I stood in it, whole. The port terminal was colder than I expected. Not in temperature, but in atmosphere. High ceilings, pale walls, and the hum of too many people waiting to be somewhere else. Families clutched souvenirs. Couples snapped final photos. Children whined about snacks. Everyone was moving. Everyone had someone. Except me. I sat on a bench near the back, suitcase beside me, bag in my lap. The officer at the customs desk had already confirmed my early disembarkation. They'd process the paperwork without much question. One glance at the letter from the ship's captain, and no one wanted to ask more. The passports were sealed in a clear envelope now, marked with a temporary hold order. Trevor, Claire, Izzy. They'd find out soon enough. At the customs queue, where they'd reach for their documents and find nothing, they'd be directed to the security desk. They'd wait, grow impatient, confused, then anxious. Eventually, a port official would tell them, Your mother requested to speak privately to authorities. You'll need to wait until she clears the matter. And that's when the unraveling would begin. I didn't do it to punish them. I did it to pause them, to place them in the one space they never let me occupy, the center of consequence. I didn't want revenge. I wanted recognition. Across the terminal, I watched as a small girl, no older than 5, slipped her hand into her grandmother's. The older woman bent to say something, and the girl laughed, leaning against her with the kind of ease only children have when they feel loved without condition. My chest ached, not from envy, from memory. That used to be me and Izzy, a long time ago, back when I mattered, back when I was more than background noise. I pulled out my journal, not to write. I had no new words, just to hold it. The paper had rippled from the salt water. the ink smudged in places, but it was still mine. Everything inside it was mine. Eventually, my phone buzzed. Claire, then Trevor, then a text from an unknown number that I knew belonged to Izzy. None of them. I answered. I turned the phone off. I sat with my thoughts. Not bitterness, not pride. Something quieter, like truth. An hour passed, then another. A port staff member came to offer tea. I accepted, drank it slowly, watched the clock. And then, finally, I stood. Walked toward the interior office where I'd been told a translator and legal contact would be available, just to finalize the report, just to confirm my statement. They asked me again, did I want to press charges? I looked at the officer across the table, and I said, no. Are you sure? Yes. She paused. Would you like to leave a written declaration? For record? I already did. They nodded, offered to arrange transport. I declined. Instead, I walked to the rental car kiosk and signed for a small sedan. Gray, simple, reliable. I drove out of the port, past buses, taxis, flocks of tourists. I didn't look back. No one followed, and still, no one called. Not after they realized I wasn't coming back to explain, that I wouldn't give them a scene to twist into martyrdom or misunderstanding. I gave them something else. Silence, not absence, not punishment. Just the space they gave me, finally mirrored back. And somewhere, far behind me, I imagined the three of them sitting side by side, waiting in a gray customs room, holding nothing but time. That was enough. I arrived home 2 days later. The house greeted me with stillness. Not empty, not lonely, just quiet in the way old homes are when they've been waiting for you. I dropped my suitcase in the hallway, hung my coat, and stood there for a moment, listening. The fridge hummed. The floor creaked under my left heel. It always had. A thin layer of dust had gathered on the windowsill. Otherwise, everything was just as I'd left it. Alive. Intact. I walked to the kitchen, made tea. My hands moved automatically. Kettle, leaves, cup. The way I'd done thousands of times before, in better years, in worse. And as I waited for the water to boil, I thought, I made it back. Not just from the ship, not just from the sea, but from the place they'd tried to put me. That quiet little corner where mothers sit until they disappear. I wasn't gone. Not yet. I carried the tea into the living room and sat in Sam's chair. The sun cut through the curtains in long golden lines. Dust floated in the light. I sipped. I breathed. I didn't cry. Instead, I opened the small envelope the ship's security officer had handed me, the copy of the key card logs. Neatly printed, dated. It showed 3 entries to my cabin over 2 days. None were mine. I slid the paper back into the envelope and placed it in the drawer beneath the phone. Then I pulled out a fresh sheet of paper and began to write. Not a will, not a letter, a list. A new one. Bank appointment, lockbox key, call May, change passport storage location, donate blue suitcase. At the bottom, I added one more. Write it down. All of it. Because someone might need to know, not just what happened, but how it happened. How ordinary people, family, can let you slip so far from their vision that they no longer see a woman at all, just a placeholder. And how you can come back from that. Not loud, not vengeful, just certain. Later that afternoon, I went outside and clipped back the roses. The garden had gone wild while I was away, leaves tangled, buds heavy. I didn't mind. Things grow where they're allowed to. The sun was warm on my shoulders. My hands ached, but they remembered the work. I looked up once. At the window where Sam used to stand on rainy mornings, coffee in hand. I imagined him watching me now, one eyebrow raised. "You came back," he'd say. "I never left," I'd answer. That night, I slept with the window open, just a crack, enough to hear the wind in the leaves. The air smelled like cut grass and something older, something rooted. I dreamed, but only vaguely. No water, no ship, just voices, mine among them. The next morning, the doorbell rang. I knew who it would be. Not Claire. She wouldn't dare. Not yet. But Trevor. Of course, Trevor. I didn't open the door. I watched from behind the curtain as he stood on the porch, hands in his pockets, head bowed slightly like a boy waiting for a scolding. He knocked once more, then waited, then left. No note, no message. Good. He didn't deserve to speak yet. He deserved to sit in the quiet and think. And maybe, if he was capable, remember. I didn't need an apology. I needed change. And if it didn't come, that would be fine too. Because now I had something more useful than their approval. I had clarity, and peace, and a story. Which, by the way, if you've made it this far, means you've listened. To the quiet one. To the woman who wasn't supposed to return. So, if you know someone like me, someone left out, left behind, nearly erased, tell them this. You're still here, and you're allowed to take up space. You're allowed to come back from the edge, even if no one claps, even if no one says sorry. Take the space. Take the story. Take your name back. And when you're ready, come home. To yourself first. That's where everything begins again. If this story meant something to you, share it. Not for me. For the woman who's still packing her bag, thinking she has to disappear quietly. She doesn't. Tell her she doesn't. Tell her today.